You know, if you were watching the Army-Navy game, as you and I were texting back and forth, you heard mentioned during the game that the Army offensive line was awarded the Joe Moore Offensive Line Award. You know, Mike, I played under Coach Moore at the University of Pittsburgh. You have the Heisman Trophy, you have the Outland Trophy. The Joe Moore Award goes to the best offensive line in the country. The Washington Huskies have won it, the University of Michigan. For the Army football team to win that award, it's a very, very prestigious award annually given to, again, the best offensive line unit in the country. When you were playing pro ball, whether it was for the Vikings or Lions or Eagles, how important is your O-line? They get overlooked all the time, Mike.
Well, yeah, well, first and foremost, you know, I've never played for Joe Moore, but you've heard his name thrown about throughout all football. All the coaches have talked about it, from the NFL down to the college to high schools. And, you know, he was a coach at Notre Dame. He actually was recruiting the Western PA area. Now, I never got a chance to directly communicate with him, but it was at one point he was recruiting me. But he's well respected throughout the game. All the O-line coaches, my former center in Philadelphia with the Eagles, Hank Fraley, worked with Joe Moore, well respected, and now he's the offensive line coach with the Detroit Lions. So anyone that Joe Moore has really coached or contacted, you know, he's got that coaching tree underneath him,
yeah. And
you just see all the great O-lines that have come from his coaching tree. But when it comes to football, that's what it comes down to. Yeah, you can be great with the X's and O's, but if you cannot be physical up front and control the trenches, I mean, obviously O-line, D-line, but that's where it's won. I mean, yeah, you can have this great scheme, but at the end of the day, football is won up front, and typically those guys are the kind of like the unsung heroes. You don't hear their name in the media. You don't hear them names in the highlights, but they're the most important piece.
You know, Coach Moore had a saying, there is no greater pleasure than moving a man from point A to point B. And I just got chills thinking about
imposing your will
amongst
his.
It's a beautiful feeling. And if you look at Coach Moore's career and, well, the guys he put into the NFL, we're talking guys like Russ Grimm, Jimbo Covert, some of those legendary names that when you think of offensive line play, they were taught by the greatest offensive line coach ever in the college ranks in Joe Moore. I go to the camp every year, I video, I get to do some coaching with the younger kids, high school kids. I highly recommend, Mike's been there with us, I highly recommend if you have a high school student in the Western Pennsylvania, Ohio area, and he's an offensive lineman, look into the Joe Moore Offensive Line Camp held every year in June in the local Pittsburgh area, and some of those names like Jimbo Covert, Russ Grimm are the coaches that'll be teaching your kid. You know, this year I was at camp, I caught up, well, he was a rookie at the time, we didn't know how he was gonna play, Zach Frazier. Jimbo Covert was there this year. So let's take a look at this year's Joe Moore camp held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. All right, Pitt legend, Hugh Green. Hugh, Joe Moore Offensive Line Camp, we're going into our 11th year here in Pittsburgh. Why do you think Coach Moore's legacy still speaks to former players like yourself? What was it about Coach Moore that people loved and come here to honor him and pass his techniques on?
Well, the basis of it is people give him credit for the offensive side, but he had retrospect of the defensive side, which was a taught version, because in that process that he used to always tell me, he learned a lot from me to process in his offensive lineman. So we had I put it there, at the beginning, a love-hate version.
Yeah.
And then the process matured and he grasped it and put it all together to I guess, enhance both sides of the ball in that way, especially offensive line.
It makes sense. I mean, if you're smoking his left tackle,
yes,
he wants to know what technique you're using.
Exactly.
And what technique he can teach his guy
to go against that.
Because let's face it, for you guys who know Hugh Green, man, you were up for the Heisman as a defensive player.
Yeah.
So you were pretty good.
Yeah, I was decent. I went.
You were decent, two-time All-Pro in the NFL.
Well, again, I worked hard, and everybody around me, which was the retrospective same thing as Coach Moore, we worked hard and everybody made each other work hard. And we learned from each other. We could sit down and you can learn and you go and you could pace it in that way. And so that was the maturity point of Coach Moore. Coach Moore, at one time, like I said, it was a love-hate, and then it was a love-hate-respect type of version. He loved to hate me, and then he respected me because of what I did. But again, in that same version, it taught him rhetoric with his offensive linemen, what to do, what not to do, how to be challenged by other teams. And he felt that with myself and Ricky Jackson, that if he learned a lot from us, then he can go and process that on into other schools that he went to and other teams that he went to.
Wow, that is amazing perspective from somebody that knew Coach Joe Moore. Of course, Hugh Green, Heisman Trophy candidate. I was never a Heisman Trophy candidate.
Well, in that period in time, the world wasn't ready for the challenge of, especially from the defensive end. And still it's not, because we haven't had anybody, pure base defense, ever win the Heisman or be characterized in that. We've had a lot of guys come close, but they were never up to the fulfillment.
They weren't Hugh Green, baby.
No, they weren't Hugh Green.
PITT Pitt.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Hugh.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hugh Green, in a word, devastation.
One of the things I remember about Hugh was his great ability to keep blockers off his legs. You don't see too many players with that innate ability.
And not a real big fellow, but he had quickness and he was an excellent tackler.
Natural strength. I don't think Hugh was much into weightlifting, but he had great biceps. He had so much upper body strength.
Green was on the cover of Sports Illustrated with the headline, "Baddest Cat in the Game." He was sitting there in his blue Pitt jersey with his arms folded and a black panther in the background. And that said, Pitt was the preseason #1 team that year in 1980 by Sports Illustrated.
And over his 4-year career, he collected 49 quarterback sacks. Basically, he lived in the other team's backfield, and he really broke ground when he was the runner-up for the Heisman in 1980. His second place finish was the highest for a purely defensive player.
He got ripped off. He should have won the Heisman Trophy. There was no better college player in that senior year than Hugh Green.
Just tremendous explosiveness and speed, and just the spearhead of the great teams that Pitt had during the late 70s, early 80s.
Roger Houston was the PA announcer, the famed Meadows harness announcer. And he had that thing where he said, "Hugh Green," you know, and the crowd would get into it, and those were fun days. They really were.
It's no coincidence that the most dominant defensive player in Pitt history played on some of the most dominant teams in Pitt football history.
Take me home. Shut up, I'm singing. Take me home, country roads, to the place
where I belong.
West Virginia. You know what? 4-time state champion wrestler. What's your name?
Zach.
That's not it. That's not.
Was it?
It's Zach.
Yeah.
You got a nickname?
No, it's just Zach.
We got to get you a nickname. I mean, you can't be an NFL center and not have a nickname.
Yeah.
Like, what would we call you?
I don't know. I'll let some other people pick that.
The Beast.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, when you come into the NFL, it's an overwhelming experience. The pressure that is now on you to make some money, the pressure to, well, become everything you can become. You may someday be like Russ Grimm in the Hall of Fame. You may be a bust. Let's be honest, right? Where's your head going into camp?
Yeah, I'm just, trying to take in all the information, just really trying to get a little bit better every day. That's all I can do is just, not look ahead to those things and just take it one day at a time and just really improve as much as I can and really get improve as much as I can as fast as I can.
Yeah, I think that's the prudent thing, slow but steady. If you put too much on your shoulders, there's an expectation there. We were joking about wrestling before. I wrestled as well, but I was certainly not a 4-time state champion in West Virginia. that has to translate to being a good offensive lineman.
Yeah, it helps out a lot. You know, really, every play there's some component of wrestling involved. You're using your hands, you're using leverage, you're using just knowing how to move people, like stuff like that. It's just every play you're putting your hands on someone.
Putting your hands on someone.
Yeah.
It's funny, Zach mentioned about putting your hands and moving someone. Coach Moore's, which we put on is it on the back of my shirt? You know, his fit.
There's no greater feeling than moving a man from point A to point B against his will.
There is no greater feeling than moving a man from point A to B against his will. Wrestling's the same way, man.
Yeah.
Especially if some dude's real cocky.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's just you and him. You know,
It's
one-on-one.
you and him. Yeah. All right, so you're a Pittsburgh Steelers now.
Yep.
Friends, families. What has the reaction been? I mean, what's that like? Were you at the draft? Would you get a call?
Oh no, I was back home in West Virginia. Just had a bunch of family and friends there. I mean, it was amazing. You know, if I could have picked, this is where I would be. So I mean,
really?
Yeah. I mean,
You don't want to be a Cleveland Brown?
No. Just like this is a dream come true, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what number did they assign you?
54.
54.
Yep.
Is that the number you wanted?
Yeah. That's the number I've always worn. So.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's nice. You get your own number. Yeah. You know, now all the veterans are just going to abuse you. You got to pay for dinner one night for the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Can I borrow $20? I mean, what the heck? That bill's going to be like $4,000.
Yeah.
My 20 that I'm asking you for is nothing.
Yeah, that's funny.
Tell them, yeah, we can go to Wendy's.
Yeah, there you go.
We get Wendy's.
Yeah.
Look, brother, I wish you the best of luck. Remember Coach Moore saying, when you're out there's no greater thrill than moving Cam Hayward or TJ Watt from a position.
Yeah.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Russ Grimm. Guys, thank you. All right, we got, obviously it's 11 years now we've been doing this, and two things we always want to accomplish. Number one, we want you to get better as a person. And number two, we're going to make you a better football player. Now, there's a lot of drills we're doing today that these guys obviously have been playing in the league, coaching. They may not be exactly the same as your high school coach teaches you, but all the drills are good. Get out of there. Hey, what'd you do? Listen to me. Where were your hands? Down it, right here. Hit it. Back. Get out of there. Hit it. Back. Get out of there. Hit it. Back. Get out of there.
So, you're under Coach Moore's tutelage at Pitt. You go to the big leagues in the NFL. His tutelage, his coaching, did that make that transition into the NFL a little bit easier?
Yeah, it made a big difference. You're already ahead in some of the technique stuff. The motivation part was already instilled, after 4 years with him in college. And basically you knew what was going on.
Yeah, right. All right, so let's go back to Pitt. You're a freshman, you get there. You get a guy like Coach Moore. You've probably never seen anybody like that before.
My first 2 years I was a linebacker.
Oh.
And then Jackie called me in and they switched me over to offensive line. And Joe came over to the offensive line. He was a running back coach. So then he came over to offensive line and he got Dan Radakovich, who was a coach with the Stil'rs, to kind of help me with some techniques and stuff. And John Kolb and Webby came over on twice a week for an hour, like in the evening, work with the hands and stuff like that. So it was, he learned a little bit as we were learning.
This is incredible. In the 11th year now, there's teams from Florida here, Virginia, I heard California. That's speaking to Coach Moore's legacy.
Well, it is, but it's also, I think it's also, there's not a lot of like offensive line camps. And we have 2 defensive stations because some of these kids go both ways. So we have, a couple years ago we put in 2 defensive stations, but it's still hands inside and controlling the blocker and stuff like that. But the coaches, the coaches are voluntary. They come in on their own. We get them a room at the hotel. We'll feed them. But flights and travel and stuff like that, that's on their own doing. And they just, Joe Moore fits somewhere in their background, whether it's Pitt, Temple, or Notre Dame. And it's just a matter of
you know, them coming and wanting to give back a little bit to the kids. He knew how to find a hot button. But we were playing somebody, and we'd sit starting 5 and then the backups behind it in the meeting room, and he would go down the lineup. Jimbo was a left tackle. He'd say, Jimbo, Fada, you need to double team, get to the backside backer. And he'd skip over me, and then he'd go to the right guard and right tackle. He'd say, Emo and May. He said, you guys need to slip block and get off the backside. And he'd go, with that cigarette, he'd go, and if our center can get a stalemate, he goes, we may have a chance. I mean, the whole week I was the center. I wanted to kill the guy I was playing against. All week, not by name, I was the center. So, yeah, he gets under your skin. But he was the type of coach that most of the guys that played for him hated him. But once you left and you realized that, you know what, he kind of got you ready for life. So.
Bingo.
Yep.
Thanks, brother.
Yep.